Liberty Nation with Tim Donner.
And now we welcome you into the portion of Liberty Nation Radio which we entitle Talkin' Liberty. It's when we welcome back our regular contributor, constitutional lawyer, and LibertyNation.com legal affairs editor, Scott Cosenza. Hello, Scott.
Hello, Tim. Happy New Year.
Yeah, I think we're still barely within the statute of limitations for when you're permitted to say that. Although we got the Chinese New Year coming up too, so it could be a.
Hey, listen, that's going to be parts of all our future when we're forced to worship it. As part of our electronic service agreements with the various companies.
You took us right down a different kind of bunny trail right there. But let's go right to the heart of the matter of what's going on in the House of Representatives, where articles of impeachment have been approved but not been sent to the Senate for trial. At the same time, we've got this showdown with Iran and the House voting to restrain Trump's Iran war powers. What's the story behind this, and what is the proper role for Congress as opposed to the president in a military showdown like this?
Well, the Congress has the absolute power to declare war, as our Constitution provides, and they do not, however, have the authority or power to change the way that the president and the Congress relate to one another when it comes to the exercise of military powers. And to me, that, Tim, is what the War Powers Resolution provides. It's an agreement between one particular Congress, and I don't have the number of the Congress that passed that law. I think Jimmy Carter signed it into law, if I'm not mistaken. So it was the Congress that passed it, and Jimmy Carter agreed to this particular legislation. Why that binds the current Congress and Donald Trump, I don't understand, and I don't think anybody can explain it to me, because I think that it is blatantly unconstitutional. The power, the way that the branches of government the powers that they have and the rights they have to exercise those powers are sketched out in one place and one place only, the United States Constitution. And if society wishes to change those rules to accommodate Tim for a standing army, which we have now and we didn't have at the time of the founding, then the appropriate place to do that is the amendment process. It's not through resolutions and acts that lack binding power.
Well, indeed, it's been a wrangle between Congress and the president when they're of different parties, sometimes even of the same party, for as long as we can remember. But closer to home, in Virginia, Scott, we've got what I fear is a powder keg, which is gun rights activists facing off against gun control activists. You've got a legislature now controlled by the Democrats that's getting more and more aggressive in dismissing a sanctuary city and county movement that's grown across the Commonwealth of Virginia. And this week they threw gasoline on the flames when a member of the Virginia House, a delegate, introduced a punish NRA bill.
Tim, the entire purpose of the bill seems to make illegal the NRA's shooting range, which, by the way, full disclosure, we've both been to. It's a top-rate facility, and it's just like to stick a thumb in their eye because he doesn't like them. Delegate Dan Helmer is the man's name, and his bill outlaws private gun ranges if more than 50 people work in the building. And so it's like, which of the many ranges in Virginia could this apply to? Well, it looks like probably only one, and it's the NRA range. And why would this be a good bill? Well, it wouldn't. And like you say, it's a powder keg. I mean, the gun-owning Virginians and Virginians who wish to retain their gun rights feel really under siege and really put upon by this new, the Democrats have won for the first time since 1994 a majority in the Virginia legislature, and they have stacked up these anti-gun bills to kind of change Virginia from a very permissive state, or a relatively permissive state with respect to gun rights, to perhaps the most restrictive state in the country. And the turmoil it's causing is real. And then to add really, again, what is a sour grapes kind of using the government to settle a private grudge sort of bill, it doesn't bode well for our home. How do we prevent ourselves from being Hong Kong? One way is to never, ever, ever let the government take our guns away, because that is our liberty's teeth.
the ultimate protection, the leveler, the thing that creates an equivalence between a 6'9", 300-pound attacker and a 150-pound feeble victim.
The ballot box, the jury box, and then the cartridge box, Tim.
Well, state it as only you can, Mr. Cosenza. Now, from guns we move to weed, and Illinois, after years of hoping and praying that, at least the people who were in favor of it, that marijuana would be legalized, now find that the dispensaries in the fair state of Illinois ran out of weed during the first week of legal sales.
They had 3.2 million, Tim, in the first day. It's the demand for legal marijuana is, unquenchable there. And they have a peculiar setup with their supply chain that they are loosening now, with kind of like separate supply chains for medical and non-medical, or prescription and non-prescription. But I just think it's emblematic of where the public is. They've had such demand for so long, and now they get to finally express it without violating the law. There's another feature of the Illinois law, Tim, that I think is pretty fascinating for our purposes, which is that it specifically says in the law that people who buy marijuana under the new legal way that you can do so in Illinois, akin to treating marijuana like alcohol, they will not run afoul of Illinois' firearms laws. And federal law currently says if you do use marijuana habitually or regularly, you are not permitted to purchase a new firearm. That's part of the federally licensed firearms like paperwork when you go to buy a firearm from a dealer. So I think it was interesting that Illinois, which is not known as a like a bastion of firearms rights, it's generally hostile to firearms rights, even they have included some protections in their law, in their state marijuana law, from the federal government, because there is that great tension, Tim, from the federal law where marijuana is 100% illegal in all instances, and the various state laws which allow for different levels of legality and criminality.
I love the use of rhetoric on this issue, the way that we often see it with these political hot potatoes. So we've gone from medical and recreational to prescription and non-prescription marijuana.
And it's important to add, by the way, that Governor Pritzker, a Democrat, issued 11,000 plus pardons for low-level marijuana offenses right before the law came into effect. So I think that's to talk about a great day for liberty there. These are people who should never have been molested by the state in the first place.
Do you remember the Equal Rights Amendment, a remnant of the 1970s when feminists got together and tried to amend the U.S. Constitution to guarantee rights that are already guaranteed in the Constitution, but never mind that. Why is this in the news again?
It's in the news again, Tim, because Virginia Democrats, the newly elected, we're going to be talking a lot about them. They say they want to pass that amendment and then try to see it ratified. And the problem is that when the Congress, the United States Congress, voted to ratify the amendment and send it to the states, it gave a certain window of time when it would be considered accepted to come back as ratified. Originally, I think that was 79, and then I think they extended it. But in any case, both the deadlines have long been expired. So this then will, unfortunately, yield again just some massive fight it's going to go to the Supreme Court, and they're going to rule on whether this becomes an amendment or not, very likely, if the Virginia Democrats choose to, go forward with passing the amendment.
Finally, Scott, CNN, the most trusted name in news, has settled its lawsuit with Covington Catholic student Nick Sandman.
To be a fly on a wall, Tim, I would have loved to have been in there for the settlement negotiations. We don't know the terms of the settlement. They could be rich for Mr. Sandman or poor for him, depending. It's a bit, it's a black box, but they didn't go ahead and fight it out. So CNN had filed a motion to dismiss. They had argued all along that their coverage was factual. It's important to remember that, litigation is expensive even for a big company like CNN, and if they could make it go away for a little bit of money, we don't want to read too much into it. But at the same time, many media outlets represented that Mr. Sandman was some kind of a racist ogre, when in fact he was the victim survivor of a lying racist jerk in the form of Nathan Phillips.
Indeed, a Native American, or as they call themselves, Indians. Thank you, Scott.
Thanks, Tim.
This program, Liberty Nation Radio and LibertyNation.com's own podcasts, The Uprising, hosted by Scott, and The Rabbit Hole, Politics and Prose, where past is prologue, hosted by our own Mark Angelides. All of it available on demand at LibertyNation.com and from fine podcast providers everywhere. So that is it for this week, but we'll be back at you next week. Same time, same station. Till then, this is Tim Donner saying stand up for liberty. And we'll see you next time on Liberty Nation Radio.